Recording in progress.
Welcome in to the Betting the Pitch Champions League Matchday 4 episode. I'm your host, Real_G Warner. We're off to a great start in Champions League this year, 23-15 so far, with a few pushes in there, but I didn't feel like taking up the characters to include that. 23-15, 61%. Going to try to keep that record going. Going to go through both Matchday, I guess for Matchday 4, both days, actual days, Tuesday and Wednesday, November 5th and 6th. On this episode, come out with a best bet for each of the days. Call it my ultimate best bet for a 1-minute YouTube reel or YouTube short and Instagram reel at @thereal_G Warner on both those platforms. You can find me on Twitter at @thereal_G Warner, on Patreon at @thereal_G Warner, and this podcast, the network is Betting the Pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And there will be a NFL podcast coming out tomorrow night on the same channel, Betting the Pitch, with @A_Schnicker. I think we're off to an 11-7 start this season. So we've been good there, just trying to keep the streak alive and trying to keep things in the right direction. Let me tweet this out so anyone can join live and hopefully get everything you possibly can out of this episode in the wee hours Monday night. We just saw Patrick Mahomes somehow miraculously recover from an ankle injury, but just that guy just seems to always be able to do it somehow, some way. But it's time to get into it. So we'll start on Tuesday with the early slate of matches to a little two-spot in Champions League. We'll start with PSV Eindhoven hosting Girona. Currently, Eindhoven a 3/4 goal favorite with more of the juice. Over-under is 3 in this one, more juice to under. Now, Girona had an incredible high-scoring match this weekend, which we haven't seen from them in a very long time. They're still very injured, but really, I think they're almost unfortunate to only to concede 3 goals because a lot of them were incredible goal scoring shots from outside the box, screamers, golazzos, wunder goals, whatever language you want to use. And I don't know that those things are that likely to repeat themselves. So that's probably a good thing for any under players, potentially get back towards the reversion to the mean. Also, Girona have not scored much at all in a long time. Their offense is really banged up. Their entire team has got one of the longest injury lists in all of international football that I can remember, certainly. And it seems like the perfect recipe for a club that just made its Champions League debut to then really struggle in its league form after really surprising last season. And then this year, I think doing the same. So I've been against Girona a lot, including their last match day in Champions League, playing Slovan Bratislava, one of the worst clubs in this competition, who we'll get to the next game on this list, as a 2-goal underdog on the road at Girona. And that game finished 2-0, went under by far, and honestly could have been a Slovan Bratislava cover, but also was pretty fortunate because they did save a penalty. So now they go on the road, Girona do, to PSV Eindhoven, where the Dutch crowds, anything from Eredivisie that's showing up all over Europe, has been awesome and makes it look like a really great environment when I want to attend sometime soon, hopefully maybe next spring, maybe. But I think Girona is a 3/4 goal underdog. I mean, it's saying something to see a La Liga side that big of an underdog on the road to a team not named Ajax, but also Ajax are not even in the Champions League competition, so maybe that's irrelevant. What I think probably is most interesting in this matchup, I mean, this big price for Girona, I just don't think I trust their offense enough to back them. And for that reason, seeing a push on 3 available right now, I like under 3 as my best bet in that PSV Eindhoven Girona matchup. Other match in this early window, 12:45 Eastern time here in the United States, 11:45 in God's land, or in the country of Texas. We have Slovan Bratislava, a 1/2 goal underdog at home in Slovakia. They are hosting Dinamo Zagreb from Croatia. Over-under is 2 3/4 here, more juice to over, and slightly more juice on the Slovan Bratislava home underdog. So I was very clued in to the Slovan Bratislava at Girona match as I played both the road underdog and the under. Happy to say I escaped with a win and a draw, which I think I'll always take. Much better than the 1-1s, and of course, much better than the 0-2 or 0-1.5 or something like that. But Dinamo Zagreb, I've not been as clued into them in the Champions League because they just really haven't been on a high level competition so far. This should be a winnable match, clearly as a road favorite, but Slovan Bratislava, I feel like while they don't have a ton of talent, I feel like at home are a different beast. So I'm pretty interested in the home underdog here, getting that 1/2 goal. I'm not sure that it's going to be one of those that's very likely to make my card, but Also lean to under 2.75 because I just don't really think that Dinamo Zagreb will be able to go on the road and score a bunch of goals. So that points toward home team as an underdog, and of course the under as well. So those are my leads in that matchup. We'll move to the bigger window, the 9 p.m. And I think most Western European countries, I think 8 p.m. in England, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, we've had a million time changes in the past weekend, at least here in the United States. I think it was 2 weeks ago in Europe. But Borussia Dortmund, they host Sturm Graz, a nice battle of Germany and Austria. Dortmund, a 2.25 goal favorite at home right now with more juice on Sturm Graz. Away from home, over under is 3.5, juiced all the way to over. Now, this total's been moving all over the place. Might see 3.75 coming soon. I think I'm mostly interested in waiting to see if this hits 4 and playing under there. I think I like that better than Sturm Graz. I've been impressed by watching Sturm Graz so far in this competition, but they do feel like one of those like lower league, just like a weaker country's domestic league, one of their best products clearly make it to Champions League, but just really look naive and like they don't know what they're doing, and don't know that you can't run into someone in the box or make a silly challenge and give up a penalty, because they do that. And that really does impact totals. The penalty's worth like 0.77 XG, which, I mean, there's been a lot of penalty misses this season, but certainly if you're giving away like almost a guaranteed goal opportunity, because it still counts as a miss, even if you score the rebound. So, or one of your teammates does. It's so hard with pluralization in soccer, but for those reasons, I'm concerned about Sturm Graz even getting a gigantic 2.25 goals. I don't know really how to price Sturm Graz from Austria stepping up and having to play in front of the Südtribüne in the Westfalenstadion in the past in Dortmund, because I mean it was hard enough for me not even playing, just standing in the Südtribüne a couple of years ago. I can't even imagine a team like an Austrian side going in there. I'm sure Salzburg is difficult when they play Red Bull Salzburg, but nothing compares to over 80,000 in a Champions League venue, though it might be a little bit more tame than the Borussia Dortmund win over RB Leipzig this weekend. But ultimately, I think there's also a lot to take from Dortmund, who played, and they're used to playing midweek matches, but they went all out, all for it on the road at Wolfsburg in the DFB Pokal and lost in extra time, and then dominated a good Leipzig side that had yet to be beaten, I think, in the German Bundesliga, and were tied at the top of the table heading into the weekend. But Dortmund dominated the game, killed Leipzig on XG, did fall behind, which shows, I think, a lot of the weaknesses to Dortmund, but ultimately a big deal there. And I think we'll see what happens, I guess, with this number. But I think I just don't know that I want to do too much to do with a side that's going to probably be in awe of playing in a Champions League venue they've always watched on TV and wanted to play in front of. I don't know that that's great to put in some tough tackles and to withstand an onslaught, because Dortmund, their defense is really limited, really injured, and they're going to try to outscore everybody as they do every match, but I think especially even more now. So I'll put Sturm Graz on my list at under 3.5, but I don't know it's that close. We'll move next to Sporting Lisboa from La Liga Portugal, and they are welcoming Manchester City to town, coming off a loss in the Premier League, unable to take advantage of Arsenal's loss. But I guess maybe they're not at this point. We're so worried about Arsenal more. It's more about Liverpool at this point. But Sporting Lisboa, they are currently a 0.5 goal underdog at home. All the juice on Manchester City. Away from home, over under is 3, and it's juiced pretty heavily to under. Now, we could see this one climb towards 3/4 of a goal. I would expect that based on the juice and based on the popular name of Manchester City, certainly worldly renowned as the best club in all of Europe, or really all of the soccer playing professional world. On the other side, Sporting Lisboa, I've been against them a fair amount in this competition, and with mixed results. I think with good results at first, not so great in match day 3. But it feels to me like the Champions League market has been in love with the Portuguese teams. Benfica, we'll get to in a little bit also, and it seems like things have changed a little bit in this competition, this match day 4. But Sporting Lisboa, I mean, they are really usually a thorn in a giant side, and this is a perfect opportunity for them. They started off Champions League very well, and then things didn't go as smoothly or as according to plan. But I think they've been favored on the road a bunch of times in this competition. And to me, I feel like Manchester City are really limited at this point. I think Kevin De Bruyne not playing when they're needing goals is certainly a tell. Erling Haaland looks absolutely lost, and I feel like we've seen the Liga Portugal sides just really play a defensive brand when they face the best in the world, and they have so much talent because Portugal, despite being a smaller nation in Europe, they were so dominant in Euro qualifying before the kind of disappointing Euros this summer, though likely because Cristiano Ronaldo was just wasting time on the pitch. But I think Manchester City, they're still revered as this dominant juggernaut. But when they go on the road and fall behind 2-0 to whoever I bet every week, and I can't even think of it, to Bournemouth last weekend, I think there's clear holes in Manchester City right now. And I think I'm going to continue to want to just bet against Manchester City, especially as a road favorite. I don't have the full goal of insurance like we did with Bournemouth last weekend, but that wasn't needed. And I do love the 3 because that important final goal for Manchester City when Josep Vargas simply jumped over Milan Kirkez, the Hungarian, for Bournemouth. That was like the best. There certainly were some other opportunities late and some good saves from Mark Travers in goal, but I think Man City, they're far off their very, very fast pace that they've set. And I think there's a lot of value on backing Sporting Clube de Portugal or Sporting Lisboa as it's listed on Bet Online right now. By the way, if you're not a Bet Online or SportsBetting.ag member, go make an account. There are links in the podcast description at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. You get some free money for first-time deposits, so go check that out. So Sporting Lisboa, I will do I'll take that half of a goal, and I lean to under 3 in that matchup as well. Moving next to Lille hosting Juventus. Currently Lille a pick'em right now at home. All the juice on Juventus away from home. Over-under is 2.25. Juice more to the under right now, and it should be because Juve's defense has been great, and they hired a defensive manager, even though they haven't been anywhere near the heights that they've expected. Well, now they go on the road to Lille, who've been literally just collecting beaver pelts or scalps, whatever more vicious way you'd like me to put it, with sweeping the Madrid sides, beating Real Madrid at home and Atletico Madrid away from home, even though they started a bunch of scrubs in the first half, like they were making huge mistakes and fell behind from it. Lille have been awesome, also in Ligue 1 as well. They went to Monaco's kit I'm wearing right now. They went to Monaco and got a 0-0 draw, beat Lyon, or maybe drew Lyon late is probably, I think, what actually happened. But Lille have been awesome. It's been a great run to start their season. Paulo Fonseca left for Milan. I think they're very happy he did because they're performing just as well without him. I think the big question is, can Juve score? Can they defend? Because they've been giving up a ton of penalties lately. I think that will definitely quiet down, as I think penalties only given in like 22% of matches, despite all the penaltitos. It's probably a higher rate in Spain, but even they have been calming down on those a little bit. I think Lille is a clear side that I want here. I'm waiting to see if it climbs to 1/4 of a goal, but I also lean to under 2.25. Though for right now, I think Lille as the side is probably my bigger interest at the moment, getting plus money on pick'em, and if you draw, you push. Moving next to Real Madrid hosting Milan. Speaking of Paulo Fonseca, and the odds are back. Welcome to Late Night with the Real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. Real Madrid currently a 1.25 favorite to Milan. Over/under 3.25. Juice very heavily to under. We might see this fall back to 3. AC Milan. They just, to me, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of good things going on with them right now. Rafael Leao is holding out for more money or a move or something like that, it feels like. And that's certainly not good when your best player and most dynamic player potentially in the world is kind of not there for your squad, I got to say. Real Madrid on the other side are just really underperforming. They took the huge blowout loss to Barcelona and then had, I think, a cup bye and then had a bye this weekend because of the floods and awful stories in Valencia. So, man, Real Madrid probably, they've definitely are well rested. That's given them some time to get some injuries rehabbed. Though I don't know that those time frames, certainly not short enough for Dani Carvajal. And who knows when the heck their Austrian David Alaba will ever come back. But for that reason, I guess I'm interested in the Milan side, but they have a lot of problems at this point too. And I feel like are just in need of better performances, but it's hard to see that happening on the road in Madrid at the Bernabeu. So I think my base interests are to the underdog at under, but probably under 3.25, just because I think Real Madrid have proven that they can defend. But really, what I think has happened is they just don't score efficiently, and that means low scoring matches because they're not scoring, and there's not much that the opponent is doing to try to threaten them because they're so worried about protecting their net. I think that both points to under 3.25. So that's my interest in Real Madrid hosting AC Milan. Moving next to Liverpool hosting Bayer Leverkusen. Currently, Liverpool, a 3/4 goal favorite with more juice. Over under is 3, juice all the way to over. And this is going to be a big matchup for Leverkusen. They've done very well in Champions League, not well in Bundesliga. But I don't think that they're going to really do much to kind of forsake this competition. The interesting part, and probably what I'm very happy to talk about in this podcast, is how valuable is it for Leverkusen to try to use or employ the strategy they did when they were on the road at Bayern Munchen, where they just basically played to nullify and Xavi Alonso. And I think Granit Xhaka as well mentioned about like being prepared for Champions League Cup ties when they just need to get a result away from home. We could see that here. Liverpool certainly have been very willing to possess the ball and not do much with it. We see a big total here at 3, all the way juiced to over, probably 3.25 before kickoff. We could see Liverpool with more juice because the UK seems to bet all their teams heading up into kickoff. We might get a full goal of insurance on Leverkusen. I think at that point, it's going to be too hard for me to resist, though I certainly have not been in love with what I've seen from Leverkusen. I've been basically fading them as a favorite as much as I could. But at +1, I think I will not avoid it. And I still lean to under 3 as well, just because I think Liverpool have shown that they're nowhere near as risk-taking as they were under Jurgen Klopp, which to me, they were much scarier under Klopp, but maybe a little bit better, certainly to under Arne Slot. I think at this point, I still need to see Liverpool dominance. And I feel like falling behind to Brighton on the weekend just doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence in me or fear in betting against them or betting against their scoring a bunch of goals. We'll move next to Bologna hosting Monaco as I wear the Monaco, I think it's a road kit. We'll see if they put this on in the whatever stadium in Bologna. I wish I had the name on the top of my head, but it's probably branded. Anyway, Bologna, pick them right now at home. All the juice on Monaco away from home. Over under is 2.5, juice slightly more to under. So Bologna have not been scoring, but they also, it's all makes sense because they've sold a bunch of their best players or they just left for greener pastures, as is their manager. And they've been trying to figure it out since then. Monaco, finally in Champions League and have been performing well. Did have the upset victory over Barcelona, I think Matchday 1. Things have not been as smooth since, but they've still been, I think, performing, and they're a road favorite here. I don't necessarily believe that Monaco are that much better than a Bologna team that have been really just are a shell of what made Champions League last year in Serie A. But at this point, I think I want to get Bologna. I don't hate to pick them right now with plus odds, but I think I'm more interested in waiting to see that hit a quarter of a goal. And then the total is interesting because it's Monaco's, to me, is a very offensive first, offense positive type of, instead of sex positive team. But they've been a little bit more pragmatic. They haven't been scoring as many goals. Adi Hütter, their manager, is from the German Bundesliga at Eintracht Frankfurt, and then kind of a failure at Borussia Mönchengladbach, a lot because Gladbach's a disaster. But I just feel like there's some interest for me in under here, under 2.5, just because I think Bologna will dictate tempo. I think they're going to play a low-scoring game, even though they have a very attacking manager, former Fiorentina manager, who moved up to take a Champions League ride. And I got to say, I don't know that. I mean, I want to get off the Bologna under train because it's in choo-chooing a lot. And last matchup we'll get to on Tuesday before I make a selection nomination for the ultimate best bet coming end of show. 9-3-1 with a push this past weekend. So off to a 75% start. Not so bad. Celtic are hosting RB Leipzig. Currently Celtic a quarter goal underdog at home with all the juice. Over under is 3 in this one. Just a little bit more to under. And I feel like there's a lot of plays in this list for me that are very appetizing. Celtic have been, besides getting blown out in Champions League, they also went to Atalanta and got a goalless draw, which was a huge result for them. I think that there's more to that low scoring. As I yawn again, oh man, I think there's something to that low scoring idea. So I'm very interested in backing the Leipzig under run. It's been really good. Did have it under, even though they lost on the road at Dortmund this past weekend, which is saying something because they took a lead early. But I think going to Glasgow will be. I mean, Leipzig are desperate. They need to win. They've basically surrendered leads in like every Champions League match so far, and it feels like going back for 5 years now. So that's going to be a big deal. I guess to that end, I'm still interested in Celtic as a side here, getting a quarter of a goal, and it's a lot cheaper than I expected, which in most times now, if I'm seeing a short underdog, especially at home, I'm like, seems like the market really likes them. I think under 3 is my biggest interest in that one, but the quarter of a goal does seem very interesting there as well. In terms of a best bet on this Tuesday episode, because I got to make a nomination for the ultimate best bet, which, as I said earlier, but in case you're joining a little bit late, it will end up showing up on YouTube at @the_Real_G Warner and on Instagram at @the_Real_G Warner in case you want a 1-minute version instead of a 40-minute. I'm going to go with that Real Madrid AC Milan under 3.25 as my best bet for this Tuesday portion of the episode. I think there's a lot of value there. And you might want to grab it before it hits 3, though. I think ultimately in a very heavily juiced sport like soccer, it's probably not a terrible idea to potentially look to safety, and taking a push on 3 wouldn't be the worst thing because that'll save you juice in the long run. We'll move to Wednesday. We'll start in the early window, as there never really seemed to be the most the biggest clubs in this spot on either day, really. But we'll start with the home away from home, as I'm yawning again. Shakhtar Donetsk playing in Czechia, or maybe in Hamburg, I think, is probably more accurate, in Germany, northern Germany. Shakhtar Donetsk, they are a Ukrainian side that are not able to play at home because of a war-torn country. It's brutal. But they are hosting Young Boys Bern. They are from Switzerland. And Shakhtar Donetsk are a half a goal favorite with all the juice on Young Boys. Over-unders 2.75 here, just a little bit more to under. I have Young Boys in a pool, and it's all about how many points you can accumulate. Young Boys still on 0. They literally were playing and doing everything they could to keep a clean sheet, and conceded late to Inter Milan, their last matchup at home on their artificial turf. And that might have been their best chance at a point until this matchup, because Shakhtar Donetsk, yes, they have a lot of Ukrainians that have been displaced, I think is a way to put it, that will show up, but it's not a home crowd. So automatically I'm interested in Young Boys getting a half of a goal. It's probably not great to say I'm interested in Young Boys. Please don't clip that. But I think that's probably something I should move far from. But Young Boys, a half of a goal underdog, feels like a decent bet to me. Also lean to under 2.75. Though would like to get to 3. I just don't think that's going to happen. Bruges then host Aston Villa, the other early matchup in Club Brugge, as some of the English, I think, incorrectly pronounce them. They are a quarter goal underdog to Aston Villa, with almost all the juice on Villa away from home. Over-unders 2.5, juiced all the way to over. This is a pretty small total. I'm not sure we've seen a 2.5 yet, but we'll just hold your horses and we'll get to another low-scoring matchup soon. But Villa, they are trying to balance Champions League, haven't certainly been at this level in a while. And Bruges, they have a really good team, just, of course, a lower budget than almost anybody in this competition. So which do you choose? The team that's not used to this, that's trying to stretch between the Premier League and Champions League, or Bruges, who honestly had a great knockout run a couple of seasons ago before they expanded the competition? Bruges are an interest to me, of course. I like the quarter of a goal. I think I like under 2.5 the most, and it looks like it'll get to 2.75 before kickoff on Wednesday in that early window. I'll move next to Inter Milan hosting Arsenal. Already alluded to a low total here. Inter a pick'em right now with all the juice. Over-unders 2.25. That's small. Over-under is a little bit more juice to over at this point. So maybe we see this climb to 2.5, though it certainly doesn't look like it's definitely getting there. Seeing Arsenal as a underdog away from home is a little bit of a surprise, unless they're playing Manchester City, I guess. But even then, it's nice to see Inter, I think, as a favorite. Or maybe it's not so nice because I was hoping to get them as an underdog. I mean, we saw Arsenal go on the road to Newcastle, fell behind to a goal, and then really didn't do much to change it. Saw William Saliba afterwards interviewed saying they deserved to lose, which I thought was extreme. think a draw is probably what he should have said, but either way, or maybe that's the truth. Inter have not been great, not been as dominant as they have been in previous years, but did score 4 goals against Juventus before capitulating and only escaping with a draw in the Derby d'Italia. I'm not really sure what to think about Inter because they haven't really been tested too much in Italy for a couple of years now. It feels like they've been far and away the best club, whether they've been winning Scudettos or not. But this is a great opportunity. They played already on the road against Premier League side at Manchester City and went in and defended for the entire match, and we saw a goalless draw. I don't know necessarily that's a likely outcome here because these two offenses are great, but when two good offenses come together, a lot of times they nullify each other because both want the ball. Though Inter, I think they've been more possession interested this season, more possession curious, if you will. But they're still in a position where I think they'd be happy to try to frustrate Arsenal and try to catch Arsenal on a break because Arsenal are going to try to basically be the dominating team that's fully in the other team's half, and they're going to play a high line, and it's going to put them at risk of a Lautaro Martinez counterattack or Marcus Thuram, who's one of the fastest men in the world, it seems, that plays this sport. With that said, the pick'em right now with all the juice is on the Inter side is probably more complicated than I'd want. I don't think that's likely to hit my card. I think I'd be more interested actually in waiting to see Arsenal move to a quarter goal underdog because I think there's a good chance they go dominate the game away from home and just struggle to score goals, and that plays toward under 2. So for right now, or under 2.25 is the total, but under as well. I think that's my biggest interest. I'll put that on the list as Inter and Arsenal under 2.25. We'll see what happens with the spread because I don't think I want Arsenal just at a pick 'em. Moving next to Bayern Munich hosting Benfica. Bayern a 1 3/4 goal favorite. Juice to split both ways. Over under is 3.5. Juice all the way to over. Might see this climb to 3 3/4, and we probably should because Bayern Munich have been scoring goals left, right, head, foot, chest, groin, thigh, whatever. And Benfica have been, I think, a higher scoring team over the last few seasons, kind of bucking the Liga Portugal trend, though they've certainly gotten a lot of respect until this matchup, including last season when they're not playing well and still we're getting too much respect in like every Champions League match. Benfica goal in 3/4 is very interesting to me. I'd love to see this hit 2. That's probably the minimum of what I want to get involved, especially because seeing how close we are to that number. Though we did see Union Berlin, certainly a much lower budgeted club, go to Bayern and really struggle this weekend and then basically just try to get out of there and not get embarrassed. Different in Champions League because everyone wants points here, but I guess not that different because that's the same sort of thing in league play. I think the Benfica side, though, it's bigger than I made it, of course, and I lean to under 3.5, though we'll be waiting to see this hit 3 3/4, as I'll be waiting to see Benfica hit 2. I think unders are probably not something I want with Bayern Munich, but maybe at 4 I'd be a little bit more interested, but that takes a half of a goal move to even get there right now. Paris Saint-Germain then host Atletico Madrid in that same late window on Wednesday. PSG, a 3/4 goal favorite, more juice on Atleti away from home. Over under is 2.5, juiced all the way to over. Really small total, I got to say, but we've gotten a lot of those on Wednesday, it seems, but for good reason. PSG score a ton in the league in France, but not a farmers league. Don't call it that, especially as I'm wearing a Monaco kit. But I think Atleti have kind of shown that they can't really put their offense together. Got a goal from the coach's son this weekend, but unimpressive against one of the worst clubs in Spain to really struggle for an entire half and only score 1 goal. I think Simeone has proven that he's going to be conservative with a lead and doesn't care about the media because really all he cares about is qualifying for Champions League and see how far he can go in this competition because that'll guarantee his salary for the next season, it seems. But PSG, they're going to try to control the ball. Atleti will let them, but I think Atleti are going to go on the road and try to stall this game out. 3/4 of goal is interesting because if Atleti lose 1-0, you only lose half your bet there, and there's a good chance that you get that late equalizer, or maybe even they take a lead and you hang on, you can win because there's some safety in that single goal loss. But I think my bigger interest is in the under 2.5, and it looks like we'll get to 2 3/4 before kickoff. Red Star Belgrade, Crvena Zvezda, then host Barcelona in one of the bigger budget differences, though I guess Crvena Zvezda is probably more solvent. Red Star Belgrade, a 2-goal underdog at home with Barcelona getting all the juice and all the bets and probably will climb from here. Over under is 3.5, which is gigantic for a gigantic total, or small total 3.5 for a gigantic side at +2. My bad. A little bit more juice slightly to the over there. Barca, I think with Hansi Flick's high line, is just not an under team for me, and I don't want much to do with Fredevesta. So first one I'll skip on this whole Champions League card. Move next to VfB Stuttgart hosting Atalanta. Currently Stuttgart, a quarter goal favorite. There's been a fair amount of movement in this matchup. I'll try to click in on this a little bit. But so total is 3 on this one, juiced all the way to over. And I feel like the Stuttgart goal scoring expectations are very high. We saw 3.5, I think it closed in a goalless draw at Leverkusen this weekend. Now they're hosting Atalanta with a total of 3, which is probably reasonable, but I think that's different Stuttgart side that wants to possess the ball this year and isn't scoring as much. And Atalanta, much better competition, bigger competition, less goals to be scored by Stuttgart, and I think makes them be more pragmatic on defense, or at least to control the ball to prevent Atalanta from having more of it. Atalanta will probably, Gasperini will set up to try to counterattack. They were played at Napoli on the early side of Sunday in Italy. So certainly not an easy step to then go to I guess, Mercedes-Benz Arena and try to compete here. In terms of movement, though, I wanted to get into that. So to me, it looked like it was a lot more juice, looking like Stuttgart would almost climb to a half a goal favorite. Maybe the performance by Atalanta this weekend against Napoli has swayed some opinion here, but we've basically swung all the way to now Atalanta looking they're going to close a pick'em in this matchup. I think it'll probably stay a quarter because it's kind of hung there, and I feel like Champions League numbers don't move necessarily that much, but I'm interested to see kind of where this one goes and where it finishes, because that will certainly dictate what I'm doing here. I lean to Atalanta getting a quarter of a goal. They showed it beating Bayer Leverkusen in the Europa League Championship last year. They handled the Germans pretty well. Lean to under 3 as well, because I just don't think either teams are scoring like the total suggests, and we might even get a move to 3.25. 2 matches left to go before we give the ultimate best bet, try to improve to 10-3-1 this season. We have Sparta Prague hosting Stade Brestois, the Czechia side hosting France. Currently, Sparta Praha, a quarter goal favorite, all the juice on Brest away from home. Over-under is 2.5, and it's juiced more to the under. Now, Stade Brestois took a loss this weekend at home against Nice. We're maybe fortunate for conceding a goal that was disallowed for an offside, and then basically conceding a similar goal right afterwards. But under hit, so thank you for that. Unfortunately, my side bet of the pick'em with that did not get a late equalizer to save that side. But Brest have been great in Champions League, I think far exceeding expectations. But I don't know necessarily that Sparta Prague is a place for them to suddenly come back down to earth. I do think there's going to be a premium on goals here. Sparta Prague, I think, are the lowest possession side in Champions League so far. At least they were before they went to Manchester City and then didn't see the ball at all, it seemed, in a blowout loss. It was close for a while. I think expecting Stade Brestois to score away from home is it's been happening, but I think it's less likely to. With that said, though, I think Sparta Prague without the ball can't really be a favorite. So I'm interested in Stade Brestois getting that quarter of a goal. I want to probably make sure I don't lose it. Looks like at very juice minus 124 currently on Bet Online. That might not be available for very long. Looks like we haven't had a ton of. We've seen some movement actually. So started a quarter of a goal of Sparta Prague, then moved to pick'em. Now back to a quarter of a goal, and it seems like it's getting a little bit more money coming in on Sparta Prague side. But man, I think I might want to get into this sooner rather than later. Just grab Brest so I don't lose that quarter of a goal when they go draw away from home. That I'll get the money instead of either not playing it at pick'em or pushing the whole thing instead of getting a half win on that bet. But biggest interest is under 2.5 in that one, and 2.25 doesn't faze me either. I think we could see this goalless or 1-0 either direction. That would certainly play out the under. Last but not least, Feyenoord hosts Red Bull Salzburg. Currently, Feyenoord a 1-goal favorite at home with more juice on Red Bull Salzburg away from home. Over under is 3, and juice is split both ways. No real indicator of which one or which way this one moves. I think Salzburg have been one of the more disappointing teams in this competition. I think they're talented, but have not really shown they're young. Maybe a lot of the cradle has been robbed because they basically sell players every year to big clubs throughout Champions League and other leagues as well. Feyenoord, I think, have been impressive, especially covering for the loss of Arne Slot, their manager, to Liverpool. I don't know that I really want much to do with this one. I did see Salzburg in person last year in San Siro against Inter. And they were very competitive, and I just don't feel like it's the same squad this year. They did lose Pavlovic to AC Milan. in that same stadium. They're not playing that day. I think Salzburg, unfortunately, they've always been a very aggressive attacking side. They've kind of changed that a little bit, which is maybe to their benefit in this competition. But I just don't know that I really want much to do with that +1, though I do like goals of insurance, especially against a side like Feyenoord, who to me are not one of the stronger teams in this competition, though they've certainly performed well. So I guess maybe I'm a little bit more interested the more I talk it out in the +1. But I think under 3 is my biggest interest in this one. If you, me, anyone that's listening to this podcast can decide that Red Bull Salzburg are going to defend and be a little bit more mature with the defenders who sometimes make some really grave mistakes. Unfortunately, and in this competition, you definitely get punished for those. In terms of my nominee for the ultimate best bet, before I get to some more plugs and then get into the ultimate best bet and actually record that thing, I think I don't really want to pick a game from the early window, just in case some of you are listening to this a little bit later or right up until the kickoff of the big window of matches in the Champions League, which is, I mean, 61%. It's been a great start to Champions League so far this season, especially the new competition and kind of new strategies. I think it's been great so far. I love that we get extra matches, and it's probably for the best, even though I don't love changing competition that wasn't broken, as Alex Padilla had said on Spanish La Liga coverage here in the U.S. But ultimately, I think it's probably giving us more matches that aren't dead rubbers, as have been said. But I think I do miss the groups and things like that. I felt like that was super sweet back in the day. But I guess maybe I'm just an old man now. I'm going to go for the ultimate best bet portion of the show. I'll make my nominee for Wednesday, Inter Milan, Arsenal, under 2.25 goals. I think it's definitely the biggest one on the list. I think there's a good chance we see a very boring game here. And that's exactly what you want when you play under. So that'll be that for the episode. But don't leave just yet. You gotta wait for me to pick which one is my favorite. We're almost 37 minutes in. I want to plug a couple other things on this platform. Plus, college basketball started today, or I guess yesterday, Monday, the 4th of November. So make sure you get involved. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/real_G Warner. Best spot for my plays these runs across all sports. The soccer you're listening to now, NFL, college football, college basketball, everything I'm putting out there is on Patreon. Definitely check in Tuesday for the Need for Screens college football podcast with that Big East Ben through pregame.com podcast network, which is where probably a lot of you know me from. But also we have the Need for Seeds college basketball podcast recording once weekly. And we are doing that, I think, until the New Year's, Christmas area. And then we're going to extend to 2 per week. So that'll be great. Plus the NFL podcast with the real_G Warner, myself, and at @A_Schnicker. We're 11-7 so far to start this year. He had a good win on Sunday Night Football last night. So we've been doing well, trying to keep that momentum going as much as possible, trying to avoid the bad beats. But, those are sometimes impossible. But it's been a good run. Thank you for all the subscriptions, the ads as well. For, new Patreon subscribers. I need to shout out a couple people as well there before I get too far along. Yeah, 11-7 year to date. I want to make sure I got the number right. But it's been a great year. Thank you to all the support. Not going to get sappy on anybody, but it's been, especially now in this podcast where I talk to myself for most of the time. But it's been a really great run, and I'm pumped with how we've been doing. And any suggestions or comments, please come at @A_Schnicker or myself, or really anyone. And you can do that on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. And if it's anything related to one of our podcasts, I'll read it on air. It'd be huge for search rankings and get us out there more. I've got some DFS stuff as well that I've been working on, trying to figure out if that's even worth it. But we'll see, I guess, if that's something to even go with. But want to thank new Patreon subscribers, Jeff Chapman, and also I think Joe Susek are back for college basketball. So thank you for coming back. Appreciate it. You don't have to stay forever, but I do appreciate all the support from Patreon subscribers. And I'm trying to figure out something to do for like the end of year to thank you all for all your help and such. And hopefully the stock tips that I've been throwing out there will be interesting too, or we'll maybe do something for you all at some point down the line. But it's time for the ultimate best bet, so might as well get into it. Hey, this is a real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the ultimate best bet portion of the Champions League Match Day 4 edition. My picks so far this year in Champions League, 23-15, 61%. My best bets on the Betting the Pitch podcast on soccer have been great, 9-3-1, 75%, trying to keep that going. So on Tuesday, November 5th, I like AC Milan at Real Madrid under 3.25 goals. And on Wednesday, November 6th, I like Inter Milan hosting Arsenal under 2.25 goals. Basically, both those matches see really good teams that are going to have visitors playing one in a very aggressive version of football. Arsenal for Milan, I think a very pragmatic, pessimistic version of football. But I think both will see two really good offenses kind of falter against decent defenses. A lot of money in those. And for my best bet on this episode, the ultimate best bet, 9-3-1, last 13 episodes, I go Arsenal under 2.25 goals on the road at Inter Milan. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in and staying up with me late night or wherever you're getting this podcast. If you get a 5-star review, that'd be huge for the search rankings and huge for my other co-hosts to feel real and to thank you all for the support. But it's been a good year. Going to try to keep this going as we head into the holiday season. I'll be here probably late night, probably yawning on air, but we'll talk to you all very soon.
Recording stopped.